In a collapsing limestone temple in the Luzon Valley, a quiet logistics officer with thick glasses was about to break 8 years of silence. What started as a routine SEAL patrol through monsoon-drenched ruins took a catastrophic turn when they came face to face with shaped charges, rising water, and death closing in from all sides. Lieutenant Brooke wasn't your typical clipboard-carrying officer. For 8 years, she had spent her life buried in supply requisitions and equipment manifests, known for adjusting her glasses nervously and never raising her voice. But before that, before the tribunal, before Aleppo, before they stripped away everything she had been something else entirely. When Doc Meyers died in the blast and Chief Delgado lay impaled by rebar with water rising around them, Brooke had no idea she was about to resurrect a ghost the military had tried to bury. She made a decision that would shatter the carefully constructed walls between who she'd been forced to become and who she'd never stopped being, picking up a scalpel in a flooded temple and operating under enemy fire with improvised instruments. What began as a missed contact and structural collapse would become a reckoning. The SEAL team would never be the same after discovering that the woman they'd dismissed as clipboard command was actually the shadow medic, the surgeon who'd saved 11 children in Aleppo and paid for it with her career, now saving their lives by defying orders one more time. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The monsoon had been falling for 36 hours straight, turning the Luzon Valley into a green hell of mud and runoff. Lieutenant Brooke adjusted her pack straps and kept her eyes on the limestone temple rising through the canopy like a broken tooth. Water sheeted off ancient stone, pooling in the collapsed archways where SEAL Team 7 was supposed to rendezvous with an asset who never showed. She counted the ways this had already gone wrong. Missed contact, no fallback protocol, and HQ ghosting their comms for the last hour. The jungle pressed in, thick, breathing, alive with the smell of rot and diesel fuel that shouldn't be there. "Hale, you good back there?" Chief Petty Officer Marcus Delgado didn't wait for an answer. He never did. Bear, as everyone called him, moved through the temple's outer corridor like a man who'd done this 1,000 times, probably had. His bulk filled the narrow passage, rifle up, helmet camera recording nothing but shadows and dripping stone. "I'm fine, Chief." Brooke shifted the supply ruck on her shoulders. Batteries, water purification tabs, meal replacements, medical overflow. Logistics liaison. That's what her orders said. Glorified pack mule, that's what the team thought. Thunder rolled through the valley, but it echoed wrong inside the temple, amplified, distorted, bouncing off limestone until it sounded like artillery. Brooke's pulse stayed steady. She'd heard worse. "Jesus, this place gives me the creeps." Sergeant Eli Torres ran his hand along a carved wall, fingers tracing serpent gods in Sanskrit she couldn't read. "You think the bad guys are actually using this dump for dead drops?" "Someone's using it for something." Doc Meyers appeared from a side chamber, his medical pack slung low, a grin splitting his weathered face despite the circumstances. Brooke said nothing, but her eyes tracked the floor. Blood, diluted by rain but still visible in the cracks between stones. Brass casings kicked in the corners. The sharp chemical smell of recently burned cordite mixing with centuries of bat guano and temple incense. The contact hadn't just failed, it had gone kinetic.
"Chief, we should—" "Can it, Hale?" Bear held up a fist. Everyone froze. In the sudden silence, Brooke heard it. Water running where it shouldn't, through channels carved too precisely to be natural. Runoff systems. The ancient architects had built drainage into the temple, but also defensive flooding mechanisms. Smart people, 1,000 years ago. Smart enough to know every fortress has a weakness. "Torres, secure that doorway. Doc, check your kits. Hale?" Bear finally looked at her, his expression caught between protection and dismissal. "Stay central. Don't wander." "Roger that, Chief." She set down her pack in what looked like a meditation alcove, automatically cataloging sight lines and choke points. 2 exits visible, 1 collapsed. Load-bearing columns showing stress fractures. The whole structure felt wrong. like standing inside a lung that had forgotten how to breathe. Doc Meyers crouched beside her, checking his trauma kit with practiced efficiency. "You doing okay with all this, Hale? I know logistics doesn't usually run this hot." "I'm managing." "That's our girl." He patted her shoulder with the same condescension she'd learned to swallow. "Clipboard command, right, Torres?" Torres snorted from his position by the doorway. "She probably writes up an after-action report on her breakfast routine." They laughed. Comfortable. Easy. The kind of banter that keeps fear at bay. Brooke adjusted her glasses, a nervous habit that everyone mistook for timidity, and let them have their moment. They didn't know she'd mapped every inch of this chamber in her head, noted the structural instabilities, calculated collapse vectors if the building came down. They didn't know she was counting Doc's supplies, mentally inventorying what he carried versus what she knew he'd need if things got worse. They didn't know a lot of things. A tremor shook the floor. Subtle, but enough to rain dust from the ceiling and crack loose a piece of carved stone that shattered near Torres's boot. "That wasn't thunder," Brooke said quietly. "Probably just the storm settling the foundation." Bear keyed his radio again. "Viper 6, this is Viper 2 actual. How copy?" Static, the kind that sounds like teeth grinding. Another tremor. Stronger this time. Brooke's mind raced through the possibilities. Seismic activity, structural collapse, or something else entirely. She thought about the diesel smell, the too-perfect timing of the missed contact, the way this valley had been marked compromised on intelligence reports 3 weeks ago, before someone decided this mission was urgent anyway. "Chief," she kept her voice level, "I think there's a secondary firing position in the East Gallery. The acoustic signature is wrong for simple runoff." Bear turned slowly. "You think?" "The water flow doesn't match the drainage pattern, and there's—" "Hale, I need you to stop thinking and start trusting that I've been doing this since you were filing requisition forms. We're fine." She closed her mouth, swallowed the protest, stayed small. It was easier that way. Had been for 8 years. Doc winked at her. "Points for effort, though." The temple groaned, a low, sustained sound that raised the hair on Brooke's arms. In her peripheral vision, she saw a hairline crack spiderweb across a support column, saw the way water was beginning to pool faster than it should, coming up through gaps in the floor rather than just running down walls. Saw, with crystal clarity, what was about to happen. "Chief, we need to—" The world flipped. The explosion wasn't an explosion. Not at first. It was a sound without sound, a pressure wave that collapsed Brooke's lungs before her ears registered the blast. Then noise rushed in, cascading stone, tearing metal, screaming that might have been human or might have been the temple dying. She was on the ground. When had she gone down? Her glasses were gone, the world reduced to blurred shapes and dust so thick it was like drowning in particulate. Brooke's training kicked in, the training no one here knew she had. Scene size up, safety, march protocol, massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia, and head injury. She found her glasses, one lens cracked but wearable, and shoved them on. The meditation alcove had partially shielded her, but the main chamber was devastated. An entire wing of the temple had collapsed inward. The shaped charge, because that's what it was, deliberate and precisely placed, had triggered a catastrophic failure of already weakened structures. "Doc!" Torres's voice, raw and desperate. "Doc, where are you?" Brooke crawled forward, ignoring the pain in her left side where something had caught her. She found Doc Meyers 3 meters away. Found what was left of him. The kind of trauma you can't fix with medicine, only with time machines and miracles. Bile rose in her throat. She forced it down. Later. Grief later. Survival now. "Hale?" There's voice, weaker than she'd ever heard it. "Hale, you alive?" "Here, Chief." She coughed dust, tasted copper. "Where are you?" "I'm... oh, hell. I'm stuck." She found him by following the sound of labored breathing. Bear was pinned against a collapsed support column, a length of rebar speared through his lower abdomen, just right of the midline. Brooke's mind automatically calculated organs at risk: liver, right kidney, ascending colon. Entry angle suggested it might have missed the major vessels, but internal bleeding was inevitable. "Okay, Chief, listen to me. You're impaled, but the object is providing tamponade. Do not try to move."
Wasn't planning on it. He tried to smile, failed. "Doc?" "Doc's gone." The words hung in the dust-choked air. Bear closed his eyes, his jaw working. "Get Torres. I'm not going anywhere." Brooke grabbed Doc's medical pack, somehow intact, somehow spared when its owner wasn't, and scrambled over debris to Torres. He was pinned under a carved stone lintel that must have weighed 300 pounds. His left leg disappeared beneath it, and what Brooke could see looked wrong, the angle suggesting multiple fractures. "How bad?" Torres asked, trying for bravado and missing. "Bad enough." She checked his distal pulses, faint but present. Checked for spine injury signs, none obvious. "But you'll keep the leg if we move fast." "Move?" "Hale, I'm under half a temple." "Not for long." She was already scanning the debris field, her mind working through physics and leverage points. A piece of rebar there, a fulcrum position there. Use the column stress to advantage rather than fighting it. The ground beneath them was wet, not just damp from rain, actually wet and getting wetter. Brooke looked up, following the water flow, and her blood went cold. The drainage channels had been broken by the collapse, and water was now flowing freely into the lower chambers. The temple had been built in a valley depression. They were in a bowl that was filling like a sink. She keyed her radio. "Viper 6. Viper 6, this is Viper 27, emergency traffic. How copy?" Static. Grinding. Empty static. "Comms are dead," Torres said. "Rock's probably blocking the signal." Probably. Or the explosion had been timed to hit when their overwatch was weakest, communication windows were closed, and help was farthest away. Tactical sophistication that made this about more than a missed contact. Water pooled around Brooke's knees now, rising with terrifying speed. She looked at Torres, trapped. At Bear, impaled. At the tons of rubble between them and any exit. At Doc's pack, with its limited supplies, meant for routine patrol injuries, not catastrophic trauma surgery in a collapsing temple. Looked at the situation the way she'd been trained to, back when she was someone else. In another life she'd thought buried deep enough to stay dead. And Lieutenant Brooke Hale, logistics liaison, began to make decisions that would shatter every carefully constructed wall between then and now. The water was ankle deep and rising. Brooke did the math automatically. Chamber volume, flow rate, time until submersion. 1 hour. Maybe 90 minutes if the water table stabilized. Neither Bear nor Torres could be moved quickly enough to matter. They'd drown in this limestone tomb if blood loss didn't kill them first. Unless. Torres. Brooke's voice changed. Something settled into it. A spine made of steel that had been bent but never broken. "I need you to listen very carefully. Can you reach Doc's flashlight?"
"Yeah?"
Why?" "Do it. Also need you to trigger any chem lights you've got. We need visibility." "Hale, what are you—" "Torres." She looked at him, and he stopped mid-sentence. "Do you want to live?" He swallowed, nodded. "Then do exactly what I tell you, exactly when I tell you. Chief, I need your permission to access classified files." "What?" He blinked at her, confused. "Your personnel file. Doc's, mine. I need you to authorize terminal access on Doc's tablet." She was already pulling it from the medical pack, praying it had survived. "Why would I—"
Because in 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you something that will make you question everything you think you know about me, and you'll want proof before you let me do what needs to be done. The tablet flickered to life. Waterproof case, intact screen, satellite uplink showing no signal, but local files accessible. Brooke's fingers moved through menus with practiced ease, too practiced for someone who just pushed papers. Brooke. Bear used her first name. That alone told her how bad he knew things were. What's going on? She pulled up her personnel file. The official one went back 8 years. Clean record, unremarkable assignments, steady progression through logistics roles. But there was a seal at the bottom, a classification marker that required command override. Bear stared at it. That's a tribunal seal. Yes. You were court-martialed? Stripped of credentials, demoted, sent to logistics purgatory. Aleppo. I was trauma surgeon, forward deployed. Operation went wrong. Civilian casualties, children caught in crossfire. Command ordered immediate evacuation. I refused. Stayed and operated under fire for 6 hours, saved 11 kids.
The file bloomed open. Commendations. Then the tribunal. Then the sentence. Removal from medical service. Retention in non-critical role. Classification of record to prevent morale impact. Torres had gone silent, holding a chem light like it was a grenade pin. Bear read, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, understanding. They called you the shadow medic? Some people did, before they made sure everyone forgot. You're telling me you're a surgeon? Was. Brooke looked at the water, past her ankles now. But yes, certified in forward trauma, emergency thoracic procedures, field amputation protocols. I can operate, Chief. I can keep you both alive, but I need you to say yes, because if I do this, I'm breaking every order that's kept me invisible for 8 years. Bear's breathing was shallower now. His eyes kept drifting. Shock was winning. He forced focus. You could have told us? And said what? Hi, I'm the disgraced surgeon your command doesn't talk about. I learned to stay small, Chief. It was safer that way. Safe. He laughed, a wet, painful sound. We're drowning in a temple. Safe ship sailed. So that's a yes. He looked at Torres, trapped and terrified, at the rising water, at Doc's body visible through the dust, at Brooke, this quiet woman they dismissed as clipboard command, who was now their only chance. Do it. Brooke didn't waste time on acknowledgement. She started moving. Torres, I need you to strip that harness, lights, batteries, everything. Rig them at head height, pointed at that shrine alcove there, the one with flat stone. Why? Because that's my operating room. While Torres worked with shaking hands, Brooke conducted inventory. Doc's pack, trauma shears, hemostats, suture kit, chest seals, tourniquets, IV lines, field dressings, limited medication supply. Her ruck, batteries, purification tabs, MRE components, paracord, electrical tape. Not enough. Not nearly enough. She looked at the mission gear scattered in the rubble, a fishing kit someone had packed for downtime, an alcohol stove for heating rations, the collapsed radio array with its copper wiring, broken temple ornaments, mostly bronze, soft enough to sterilize and bend, and Doc's surgical training. Whispered instructions from beyond death because he'd been good at his job and good at teaching, and she'd watched every movement, asked every question, absorbed every technique in the 2 months they'd worked together. Brooke gathered materials with steady hands, fishing line for sutures where Doc's supply wouldn't stretch, alcohol stove to sterilize improvised instruments, a spare IV line she could convert to a chest drain if Bear had internal bleeding into his pleural cavity, paracord and webbing to rig a traction system for Torres's leg. She built her surgical bay in the shrine alcove, limestone offering slab wiped clean with alcohol prep pads, chem lights and headlamps arranged in a semicircle, a steady draft from a crack in the ceiling to vent fumes and provide some ventilation. "Chief, we need to move you." Brooke knelt beside Bear, already calculating the mechanics. "This is going to hurt worse than anything you've ever felt." "Just do it." She rigged a spine board from a piece of door panel, padded it with their packs, and began the agonizing process of moving an impaled man without disrupting the rebar. Torres helped from his prone position, holding Bear's legs stable. It took 20 minutes and left all three of them shaking. But Bear was on her operating table, as such as it was, and the water was only inches away. Brooke scrubbed her hands and forearms with iodine until her skin burned red, stripped to her undershirt despite the cold, laid out her instruments, real and improvised, in precise order, put on the last pair of sterile gloves from Doc's kit. Torres had gone quiet, watching her transform. Bear tried to focus through the pain. "You really were a surgeon." "I really was." Brooke picked up trauma shears, positioned them. "I really am." "And Chief?" "Yeah." "You might want to bite down on something. This is going to be a very long night." She looked at the rebar impaling him, the water now lapping at the table's base, the darkness pressing in around our circle of light. Thought about the tribunal, the years of silence, the careful erasure of everything she'd been. Thought about 11 children in Aleppo who were alive because she'd chosen defiance over obedience, and Lieutenant Brooke Hale, logistics liaison, shadow medic, ghost surgeon, began to operate. The temple breathed around them, monsoon rain drumming overhead like a heartbeat, water dripping through cracks in rhythm with Brooke's pulse. She focused on the count. 1, 2, 3. Each number a second, each second a life continuing or ending. Bear's chest rose and fell too fast, too shallow. Brooke placed her hand on his abdomen, feeling for rigidity, guarding distension. The rebar had gone in clean, if you could call any impalement clean, but staying in didn't mean staying stable. Internal bleeding could be pooling where she couldn't see it. "Torres, talk to me about your oxygen sats." She'd rigged a pulse oximeter to Bear's finger, one of Doc's few electronic tools still functioning. 89%. That's bad, right? Getting worse. Brooke listened to Bear's chest with her stethoscope, comparing sides. Diminished breath sounds on the right, hyperresonance to percussion. Her mind flipped through the checklist: blunt force trauma, possible rib fractures, progressive pneumothorax from the explosion's pressure wave. A tension pneumothorax would kill him before the rebar did. "Chief, I need to decompress your chest." "That sounds terrible." "It's going to feel worse." She prepped the site, 5th intercostal space, mid-axillary line, swabbed iodine, picked up the modified IV catheter she'd adapted into a chest tube. On 3. 1. She didn't wait for 3. The needle punched through skin, muscle, pleura. Air hissed out, trapped pressure escaping. Bear's whole body jerked, but Torres held his legs steady, talking through his own fear about a childhood dog named Sargent and a girl from San Antonio who broke his heart in 10th grade. Brooke threaded the catheter, secured it with tape and prayer, connected it to the improvised drainage system, a cut hydration bladder serving as a water seal, bubbling with each bear's exhales. His oxygen saturation climbed. 92, 94. You're doing great, Chief. She turned her attention to the abdominal wound. The rebar couldn't stay, but removing it meant controlling whatever bleeding it was currently temp-arming. She needed visualization, needed to see inside. In a hospital, she'd have ultrasound, CT imaging, a team of specialists. Here, she had a flashlight and her hands. Brooke made her incision parallel to the rebar, extending the wound, creating a window. Bear's fists clenched. Torres kept talking, now about his brother, Rafael, who died in a helicopter crash when a medic decided the weather was too risky for evacuation. The bitterness in his voice cut through the darkness. "That why you don't trust rear echelon?" Brooke asked, working. "That's why I don't trust people who play it safe." "I'm not playing anything safe right now, Sergeant." No, you're really not." Blood welled up as Brooke explored the wound tract. She packed it with gauze, counting seconds, then slowly withdrew the packing to see what was bleeding. A branch of the superior mesenteric artery, not the main trunk, thank God, but significant enough to matter. Hemostats. Clamp. Tie off with the fishing line she'd sterilized. The movements came back like muscle memory, like riding a bicycle, like killing someone you used to be and finding out she never actually died. Aleppo flooded back. The field hospital, the mortar rounds walking closer, commands screaming over the radio to evacuate. "We're pulling out. Leave them. That's an order." And the children. So many children. Bleeding on tables she couldn't abandon. She'd operated through the bombardment, saved 11, lost 3. Survived. To face the tribunal. "Brooke." Bear's voice pulled her back. "You're crying." She touched her face. Wetness mixed with sweat. "Concentration, that's all." "That's not all." But he didn't push it. She tied off the bleeder, irrigated again, checked for other injuries. Found a liver laceration, small, woozing rather than spurting. Packed it. Closed in layers with a combination of Doc's sutures and the fishing line that would leave scars but keep him alive. The water reached the table. Cold lapped at Brooke's feet. "Torres, we need to move to you now. My leg's still under a building." "Not for long." Brooke assessed the limptal pinning Torres while her hands stayed busy, maintaining Bear's chest tube, checking his vitals, her mind splitting focus the way combat surgeons learn to. The carved stone was massive, but the collapse had created a fulcrum point. Basic physics, leverage, force, and timing. "Eli, when I lift, you pull yourself free. Don't think, don't hesitate, just move. If you drop that thing, I won't." She positioned the length of rebar as a lever, found her fulcrum in a wedged piece of column, calculated the angle, felt the weight resist, then yield. Bear scrambled backward, his leg dragging, and Brooke guided the stone back down with control that came from somewhere beyond adrenaline. His leg looked like a medical textbook diagram of things that went wrong. Compound fracture of the tibia, fibula probably gone too, the limb swollen to twice its normal size, compartment syndrome developing, pressure building in the fascial compartments, strangling blood flow, killing muscle and nerve. She checked distal pulses, barely palpable. "Torres, this is going to sound bad."
Worse than it looks? I need to perform a fasciotomy. I have to cut open your leg to relieve the pressure or you'll lose it permanently. His face went white. Cut it open? Like surgery open? Exactly like that. Brooke was already prepping, moving him to the surgical space, her movements efficient despite the water now ankle-deep around the stone table. Can I get you to knock me out? Doc had lidocaine, but not enough for this. I can give you something for the pain, but you'll be conscious. Eli closed his eyes, breathed. Do it. She made the incision. Lateral approach, following the line of least resistance. The skin split. The fascia beneath bulged and glistened. As she cut deeper, the compartment decompressed with a sigh like a long-held breath finally released. Eli made sounds that weren't quite screams. Bear, stabilized on his own table, talked him through it with the rough compassion of someone who understood pain intimately. Brooke checked the muscle beneath. Viable, pink, contracting when she touched it. Good. She'd been in time. That's when she heard it. Voices. Outside the temple. Not English. She caught Eli's eye, put a finger to her lips, killed her headlamp. In the sudden dimness, lit only by chemlights, they became shadows among shadows. Footsteps. Multiple contacts. Flashlight beams cutting through the rain outside, sweeping the collapsed sections. Bear's breathing was too loud. Torres was shaking. Brooke reached into her remaining gear and found paracord, a carabiner, a piece of the broken door. She rigged it quickly, a delayed drop system. Tied one end to Torres's position, ran the cord through debris to an unstable pile of
Rubble in the eastern gallery, attached the door fragment to the cord's end, balanced over empty space. "What are you doing?" Torres whispered. "Setting a trap. When I pull this, the door falls. They investigate the noise there. We stay quiet here." "That's insane." "You have a better idea?" The patrol entered the temple proper. 3, maybe 4 fighters. The voices echoed, discussing something in rapid Tagalog. Brooke's medical Tagalog was limited, but she caught enough to understand. Americans. Explosion. Confirm kills. They weren't here by accident. This was cleanup. The beams swept closer. Brooke's hand tightened on the paracord. She watched the angles, calculated the timing, waited until the patrol was deepest into the main chamber, then pulled. The door fragment crashed down in the eastern gallery, a perfect imitation of further collapse. The patrol spun, shouting, rushing toward the sound. In the darkness of her improvised surgical bay, Brooke returned to Torres's leg, worked by touch as much as sight, closing the incision with careful stitches, her hand steady even as her pulse hammered. The patrol searched the gallery, argued. Their lights played over walls 20 meters from where the Americans hid. Bear's chest tube bubbled. Torres breathed through clenched teeth. Brooke's needle wove skin closed, each stitch a prayer. Finally, the patrol withdrew. The voices faded. The rain swallowed their retreat. "Holy hell," Torres whispered. While they were right there." The work doesn't stop for company. Brooke secured the final stitch, dressed the wound. "Chief, how are you holding?" "Been better. Been worse, too." Bear's voice was stronger now, the shock receding under fluid resuscitation and pain control. "That was the gutsiest thing I've ever seen." That was necessity, but her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline catching up. The water reached mid-calf, still rising. "We need to move higher. There's a gallery above us. I saw it in the initial survey." "With what strength?" Torres gestured at his splinted leg, at Bear's sutured abdomen. The shaft was less a stairway and more a vertical nightmare. Carved handholds slick with algae, gaps where stone had crumbled away, the whole thing pitched at an angle that promised broken necks to the careless. But 15 meters up, Brooke could see a ledge, dry stone, and most importantly, airflow that meant an opening to the outside.
She rigged the rope system with everything available. Climbing webbing from Bear's kit, rifle slings, the paracord from her trap, even Torres's bootlaces. Created a pulley system anchored to temple rings that had held offerings 1,000 years ago and would now hold wounded soldiers. Chief first. He's the most critical. Bear tried to protest. Couldn't muster the energy. Brooke wrapped him in every piece of padding she could find, secured his chest tube against his body with tape and prayer, rigged a harness that would distribute weight without putting pressure on his abdomen. Torres helped from his prone position, his hand steadier now, focused on something beyond pain. On 3, we haul. Smooth and steady. If he starts slipping, we hold position until we can reset. They pulled. Bear rose, rotating slowly in the harness, his face locked in concentration. Halfway up, a stitch gave. Blood seeped through the dressing. Hold! Brooke tied off her end and scrambled up the shaft with a speed that surprised even her, met Bear at his level, reopened her medical kit, worked by headlamp to reinforce the closure. You're doing great, Chief. Lying doesn't suit you, Doc. Doc, not Hale, not Lieutenant. The word was recognition, respect, trust. Almost there. She climbed back down, and they resumed the haul. Bear reached the ledge, rolled onto solid stone, gasped for relief. Torres was next, lighter but more awkward with the splinted leg. Brooke climbed beside him, one hand on the rope, one hand steadying his wounded limb. Her muscles screamed. Her side, where she'd taken debris in the initial collapse, throbbed with fresh pain. She ignored all of it, climbed, hauled, breathed. Torres's hand appeared, grabbing her wrist, pulling. She crested the ledge, rolled onto stone, lay there breathing like she'd surfaced from drowning. That was stupid. That was supplies we can't replace. Brooke sat up, already moving into assessment mode. How's your breathing, Chief? Better than yours. She laughed, a short, surprised sound. Then she remembered the satellite modem in her remaining gear. Dug through the pack with numb fingers. Found it. The screen was cracked but flickering. We might be able to call for help. Might? She pulled out the backup battery she'd been carrying in her ruck, salvaged the foil from an MRE heater, rigged a connection that would make electrical engineers weep. The modem blinked once, twice. Green. We have signal. The voice that crackled through was pristine, despite the static. Cultured, controlled. Everything a rear command officer should sound like. This is Viper 6. Identify. Viper 27, Lieutenant Brooke Hale. We have 2 critical casualties and 1 KIA. Request immediate dust-off. Silence. Then, Hale, your designation shows logistics. Situation evolved, sir. Status of Viper 2 actual. Brooke looked at Bear, who nodded. Critical but stable. Penetrating abdominal trauma managed with field surgery. Tension pneumothorax resolved. He's got hours, not days. More silence. Did you say field surgery? Yes, sir. You're not a medic, Lieutenant. No, sir. I'm a surgeon. She let the words hang, defiant. Was, am. Depends on your perspective. Torres made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. The voice changed, sharpened. State your full name and service number. She did. Hold position. The connection went muffled. Someone covering the mic. Voices in the background, urgent and heated. Then, Lieutenant Hale. This is Commander Avery Shaw. Do you remember that name? Brooke's blood went cold. Shaw. He'd been on the tribunal. A junior officer then, riding senior coattails, voting the way he was told. I remember. Then you understand why I'm about to ask you if you're certain about what you just told me. Sir, I have performed an emergency thoracostomy and exploratory laparotomy on Chief Petty Officer Marcus Delgado and a fasciotomy on Sergeant Eli Torres. Both are stable. Doc Meyers is dead. I am requesting immediate medical evacuation. Weather is non-compliant for flight operations. You'll hold position until dawn. Dawn is 6 hours away. Chief Delgado needs blood products and... You'll hold position, Lieutenant. That's an order. Torres erupted. Are you kidding me? She just saved our lives and you're going to... Sergeant, identify yourself. Eli gave his name, rank, and serial number with acid precision. Sir, Lieutenant Hale performed 2 surgeries in a combat environment under enemy contact. She's the only reason we're alive to have this conversation. Another pause. Shaw's voice returned, careful. Lieutenant Hale, your record indicates complications. Medical certification revoked following Aleppo. I remember. But the certification was revoked, not the training, not the skill. And those men are alive because I didn't wait for permission. Dawn evac is the protocol. Protocol assumes the patients can survive the wait. You're out of line. Sir, with respect, I stopped worrying about lines when I pulled rebar out of a man's abdomen with temple water rising around my ankles. Bear laughed, a weak but genuine sound. She's got you there, Commander. Who is this? Chief Petty Officer Delgado, sir. The one with the rebar. I'd like to formally state that Lieutenant Hale operated with my consent and saved my life. Whatever her record says, she's our medic. She's our doc. Shaw's silence stretched. Brooke could almost hear him calculating. Career implications, regulations, the optics of overruling a dying man's testimony. Available pilots. Captain Nia Harper is on standby. But she's 1 fuel threshold from... Get her. Sir, the weather. Get Harper. I'll authorize the fuel exception. Shaw's voice changed again. Something almost like respect creeping in. Hale, you're going to face questions. A lot of them. I've faced tribunals before, sir. This won't be like before. I know. This time, I'm not apologizing. Brooke heard it then. A sound like distant thunder, but rhythmic, mechanical. Rotors. Coming low and angry through the monsoon. Harper just launched. ETA 12 minutes. And Hale. Sir? For what it's worth, Aleppo was political. What you did there was right. The connection cut. Torres stared at her. Who the hell is Captain Harper? Brooke smiled, tired, real. Someone who was in Aleppo. Someone I saved. And she's coming for us? She's coming for us. Bear reached out, caught Brooke's hand, squeezed once. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Chief. We still have to get on that helicopter. The rotors grew louder. Rain hammered the temple. And somewhere in the darkness, enemy patrols still searched for American bodies that refused to die. Brooke checked her watch. 11 minutes until dust-off. Time to make sure they all lived long enough to see it. The extraction point was 300 meters away. It might as well have been on the moon. Brooke looked at the terrain through the opening in the temple wall, a knife-edge ridge, slick with rain, roots like tripwires, and visibility measured in arm's lengths. Lightning flared, turning the jungle into a snapshot of hell. Thunder followed 3 seconds later. Close, getting closer. We move between the lightning. When it strikes, we freeze. Motion detection is harder in strobe conditions. You've done this before, Torres said. Different jungle, same principles. She secured Bear's chest tube with extra tape, checked Torres's splint, and distributed what little gear remained. Chief, you're on my back. Torres, you're mobile with a crutch. Stay in my wake, step where I step. I outweigh you by 70 pounds, Bear protested weakly. And I'm not asking you to walk. Shut up and hold on. She rigged a modified fireman's carry that distributed his weight across her shoulders and hips. Physics, leverage, and stubbornness. Her side screamed where the debris had caught her, but pain was just information. She filed it away and started moving. The ridge was worse than it looked. Mud sucked at her boots. Roots grabbed. Rain made every surface a skating rink. Behind them, in the flooded temple, Lights flickered. The patrol had returned. "They're tracking us," Torres whispered. "I know." Brooke's mind raced through options. They were leaving a trail. Disturbed mud, blood drops from Bear's dressing, boot prints that rain hadn't yet erased. Next lightning flash, we detour. There's a karst sink 20 meters north. We use it. Use it how? Trust me. The lightning came. She pivoted, moving at an angle off the main path. Found the sink, a limestone hole dropping into darkness, probably connected to the same water table that had flooded the temple. She pulled a chem light from her kit, cracked it, and rolled it down the slope into the sink. Green glow tumbled into the earth, visible but distant. "They'll think we fell," Torres understood. "Clever. Or we circle back and ambush them," Bear murmured against her shoulder. "Chief, you're in no condition." "Got a flashbang in my vest. Left pocket. Rig it."
Brooke hesitated, then understood. She set Bear down carefully against a tree, pulled the flashbang, and positioned it at the sink's edge with a tripwire made from fishing line. Anyone investigating would trigger it. "That's mean," Torres said with appreciation. "That's survival." She got Bear back on her shoulders and moved. The ridge narrowed to barely a meter wide, a razorback between valleys, the kind of terrain that punished mistakes with long falls. Brooke's boots found purchase on exposed roots. Her breathing settled into a rhythm. In, out, step, step. Behind them, a flare popped, red light washing the jungle. "Contact," Torres hissed. Figures moving through the trees, 3, maybe 4, closer than before. They'd found the blood trail. Lightning strobed. In the flash, Brooke saw the karst sink, saw one figure approach it, lean over. The flashbang detonated. Even at distance, the concussion rolled over them like a physical thing. Shouts, confusion. The patrol scattered. Brooke ran. Not ran, staggered forward at maximum sustainable speed, every muscle burning, Bear's weight threatening to buckle her knees. Torres kept pace, his face locked in a rictus of pain and determination, the rebar crutch stabbing into mud with metronomic precision. The ridge opened into a small clearing. This was it, the LZ. "Viper 27, this is Widow 31, how copy?" Nia Harper's voice over the radio made Brooke want to cry with relief. "Widow 31, we are at the primary LZ, 2 critical casualties, enemy within 100 meters. Copy. Inbound 2 minutes. Be advised, this will be a hot extract. I can't fully land in this weather." Understood. Brooke set Bear down in the most sheltered spot she could find, a depression ringed by roots. Pulled out the last pressure dressing and checked his vitals. Pulse rapid but regular, respiration shallow but adequate. He was crashing, the combination of shock, blood loss, and exertion finally catching up. She dug through her kit, found one remaining bag of IV fluids, warmed it against her body. Old habit from Syria, from standing in operating rooms where the heat had been cut and soldiers had died from hypothermia as much as wounds. Bear's eyes fluttered open. "Brooke, I'm here, Chief. My daughter, Emma, she's 7. If I don't, you're going to tell her yourself. You're going to walk into your house and you're going to pick her up and you're going to tell her about the crazy surgeon who operated on you in a temple. You hear me?" "Yeah, I hear you." His hand found hers. The rotor sound built from whisper to thunder. Trees bent under the wash, and then the helicopter materialized, a dark shape against darker sky, navigation lights like eyes, skids hovering 2 meters off the ground because the terrain wouldn't let Nia land. Gunfire erupted from the tree line, rounds cracked past, snapping branches. "Go! Go! Go!" Brooke hauled Bear up, and Torres grabbed his other side. They staggered toward the helicopter, mud and blood and rain making everything slippery. The door gunner opened up, covering fire that turned the jungle into a light show. Brass casings rained down, smoking in the wet. Hands reached from the helicopter. A medic, not Doc, never Doc again, grabbed Bear, hauled him in. Torres went next, shoved bodily into the bay.
Brooke stood in the rotor wash, one hand gripping the skid, making sure they were secure. A round hit the tree behind her, showering her with bark. "Hale, get in!" Nia's voice over the external speaker. She pulled herself up. The door gunner grabbed her vest, dragged her in. She landed in a heap on the deck, immediately scrambling to Bear's side. "I've got him," the flight medic shouted. "The hell you do!" Brooke shoved him aside, not roughly, but firmly. "I know his injuries. I did the surgery. Give me your aid bag." The helicopter banked hard, dropping into a valley, using terrain to break line of sight. The door gunner fired again, shorter bursts now, conserving ammunition. Brooke worked while the aircraft bucked and twisted, checked Bear's chest tube, still patent, checked his abdomen, dressing holding. Torres was stable, conscious, swearing creatively in Spanish. Through the cockpit, she caught a glimpse of Nia, profile backlit by instrument lights, hands steady on the controls, flying like she was threading needles in a hurricane. They'd served together in Aleppo. Nia had been medevac then too, had flown into situations that grounded everyone else, and had pulled out casualties that command had written off. Had been pinned down with Brooke for 6 hours while they operated on children in a basement that shook with each incoming round. "Viper 6, this is Widow 3-1. 3 souls on board, 2 critical, proceeding direct Naval Hospital Subic. Flight time 40 minutes. If anyone has a problem with that, they can file a complaint." Static. Then Shaw's voice, different now, uncertain. "Widow 3-1, you are authorized. Godspeed." The helicopter climbed, breaking through cloud cover. The jungle fell away below, lost in monsoon darkness. Brooke finally let herself breathe. Torres met her eyes across the bay, gave a shaky thumbs up. Bear was unconscious but stable, the flight medic now working with her rather than against her, monitoring vitals. "Doc?" Bear's voice, barely audible over the engines. "I'm here. Emma's middle name is Brace." "I know, Chief. You told me 3 times already. Just making sure you remember, for the story." "I'll remember. Now rest." He did. The flight was a controlled fall through layers of weather that tried to kill them. Nia flew on instruments, trusting gauges over instinct, while Brooke fought to keep 2 men alive in a cabin that pitched like a boat in a storm. The flight medic, Corman Jenkins, according to his name tape, had stopped questioning her and started following her lead. Together they managed the careful ballet of field care in motion, adjusting IV flow rates as the helicopter banked, protecting the chest tube during evasive maneuvers, monitoring oxygen saturation while the aircraft climbed and dove. "You really did surgery in a temple?" Jenkins shouted over the engine noise. "Didn't have much choice. I've been doing this for 8 years. Never heard of anyone." He stopped, reassessed. "You're the shadow medic." Brooke didn't answer. She was busy watching Bear's pressure trend downward, too fast. She'd missed something or something had come loose, or the flight stress was too much. She ran her hands over his abdomen. There, firmness where there shouldn't be, rebound tenderness, internal bleeding, probably from a vessel she'd missed in the poor lighting. "Naya," Brooke keyed the intercom. "How far?" 28 minutes. Bear didn't have 28 minutes. Brooke made calculations. Blood volume, hemorrhage rate, shock progression. Ran through options that all ended badly. "Jenkins, I need you to set up for a field transfusion. We don't have blood products. We have Torres. Check his blood type." Torres's eyes went wide. "You wanna... right here? In a helicopter? I want you to keep our chief alive. What's your type?" "O positive. Chief's O negative. Close enough in an emergency." She was already prepping, using supplies from Jenkins' kit, moving with the kind of decisive speed that came from knowing every second mattered. "We're going to pull blood from you and push it into him. Direct transfusion, old school." "That's insane," Jenkins breathed. "That's what he said about the surgery." She catheterized Torres's other arm, rigged a transfer system using pressure bags and tubing. "This is going to make you dizzy, probably nauseous, definitely weak.
You good with that? Torres looked at Bear's gray face. Do it. The transfusion started, red flowing from one warrior to another. Brooke monitored both men, donor and recipient, while the helicopter punched through a wall of weather that made the airframe shudder. Bear's color improved. Marginally, but enough. Naya's voice came through the intercom. Hospital visual, 3 minutes. Naya, I need you to fly the smoothest approach of your life. We've got active transfusion running. Copy. Greasing it in. True to her word, the landing was silk, barely a bump as the skids touched concrete. The moment they were stable, the doors flew open. A trauma team swarmed in. Real doctors, real equipment, sterile everything. A surgeon Brooke didn't recognize took one look at Bear, at the chest tube, at the abdominal dressing. Who did this work? I did. In the field? In a collapsing temple under enemy fire with improvised instruments. The surgeon blinked, looked closer at the sutures, the tube placement, the wound management. This is textbook. Better than textbook. He's bleeding internally, missed vessel or late failure. He needs an OR. We'll take it from here. But the surgeon's tone had changed from dismissive to respectful. You're coming with us. I want you in the OR for continuity. Sir, I don't care what you are or aren't on paper. You know this patient's injuries better than anyone. You're scrubbing in. They rolled Bear away, Brooke jogging alongside, calling out details, every incision, every ligature, every concern. Torres went next, wheeled by another team. Jenkins gave her a look that might have been awe before the chaos pulled him away. Naya appeared at her elbow as they entered the hospital proper. You look like hell, Brooke. You should see the other guy. I did. You kept him alive through the impossible. Again. Naya's face was tight. Shaw's already calling for an inquiry. Of course he is. They're going to question everything. Why you were there, why you operated, whether you had authority. Let them question. Brooke scrubbed at a sink, the water running red, then pink, then clear. I'm done being quiet about who I am. Good, because that was never you anyway. They pushed through doors, into the operating theater. Sterile lights, modern equipment, a team of specialists moving with choreographed precision. The attending surgeon gestured her to his side. Talk me through what you did. Brooke did. Every step, every decision, every improvisation. The surgeon operated while she narrated, nodding at her descriptions, occasionally murmuring approval. 2 hours later, Bear was closed and stable. The missed bleeder, a small branch of the hepatic artery, had been found and controlled. The surgeon pulled down his mask and looked at Brooke with something like wonder. If you hadn't done what you did, he would have bled out in that temple. The fasciotomy on the other patient, Torres, also saved his leg, maybe saved his life. He paused. Who trained you? Hopkins. Johns Hopkins, surgical residency. Before. Before what? Before Aleppo. Before the tribunal. Before I became a ghost. Well, ghosts don't usually do this quality of work. Welcome back from the dead, Dr. Hale.
The inquiry convened in a conference room that smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Commander Shaw sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 senior officers Brooke didn't recognize. A court reporter sat in the corner, fingers poised over a stenotype machine. Brooke stood at attention in a clean uniform someone had found for her. Her side still throbbed where she'd been hit by debris. Her hands were scrubbed clean, but she could still feel the ghost of blood under her nails. Lieutenant Hale. Shaw's voice was formal, careful. This inquiry is to establish the facts of Operation Mindanao Recover, specifically regarding medical procedures performed in the field and command decisions made under duress. I understand, sir. For the record, your personnel file indicates medical certification was revoked following events in Aleppo, Syria. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Yet, you performed 2 complex surgical procedures yesterday. Yes, sir. Explain. Brooke took a breath. Doc Meyers was killed in the initial collapse. Chief Delgado had penetrating abdominal trauma and developing tension pneumothorax. Sergeant Torres had compartment syndrome from a crush injury. Without intervention, both would have died within hours. I possessed the training and experience to intervene. So I did. You disobeyed protocol. I saved lives, sir. That was my protocol. One of the senior officers, a captain with salt and pepper hair and surgeon's insignia, leaned forward. Commander Shaw, I've reviewed the medical records. The field procedures were exemplary. Hospital surgeons confirmed that both patients would have died without those interventions. The issue isn't competence, Captain Reeves. It's authority. The issue is dead soldiers versus living ones, Brooke said quietly. Sir. Shaw's jaw tightened. You were stripped of credentials for disobeying an evacuation order to operate on civilians, children. Brooke's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. I was told I'd never practice medicine again, told my judgment couldn't be trusted, told I endangered military personnel by staying. You did endanger them. And I saved 11 children, 11 kids who would have bled out if I had followed orders. She met his eyes. You were there, Commander. You sat on that tribunal. You know what happened. Shaw flinched. But this isn't about Aleppo. This is about a temple in Luzon where I had a choice. Watch good men die while I waited for permission, or act. I acted. I'd do it again. Silence. The court reporter's fingers stilled. Captain Reeves cleared his throat. Lieutenant Hale, would you step outside for a moment? She saluted, turned, walked out. The hallway was empty except for Torres, leaning on crutches, his leg immobilized in a proper surgical cast. How's it going in there? He asked. Hard to tell. For what it's worth, I gave my statement this morning, told them everything. How you operated while enemy patrol was meters away, how you climbed with bear on your back, and how you kept us both alive when any sane person would have given up. Torres. Eli. Just Eli. He smiled. You saved my life, Doc. Saved it twice. Once with the surgery, once by giving me something to believe in again. After Raphael, I stopped trusting anyone to make the hard calls. You proved me wrong. The door opened. Captain Reeves gestured her back in. Brooke returned to her spotted attention. Shaw looked different now, smaller somehow, older. Lieutenant Hale, Reeves said, this board has reached a preliminary finding. Your actions in the field, while technically outside standard protocols, demonstrated sound medical judgment and resulted in the preservation of 2 lives. Furthermore, testimony from Chief Petty Officer Delgado and Sergeant Torres confirm you acted with their informed consent and command authority. Brooke's heart hammered. Sir, the board recommends reinstatement of full medical credentials, effective immediately. Additionally, we're authorizing creation of a new training program, Tactical Field Medicine in Denied Environments. You'll lead it. I couldn't breathe. Sir, Shaw stood. His face was tight, conflicted. Lieutenant, Dr. Hale, I owe you an apology. Several, actually. Aleppo was political. The tribunal made an example of you to satisfy diplomatic concerns. It was wrong. Sir, let me finish. He took a breath. What you did yesterday was extraordinary. You are being awarded the Silver Star for valor under fire, and for what it's worth, I'm glad you disobeyed orders, both times. The room blurred. Brooke blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in front of these officers. Reeves stood as well. Dismissed, Doctor, and welcome back. She saluted, turned, made 3 steps into the hallway before her knees went weak. Torres caught her, his crutch clattering. Are you okay? I don't know, she laughed, the sound unsteady. I think I'm okay. Bear appeared at the end of the hall, being wheeled by a nurse. He looked terrible, pale and stitched and moving carefully, but he was alive and grinning. Doc, they're springing me in a week. Emma's flying out to visit. Good, that's good. Chief, Marcus, it's Marcus now. Down the hall, Nia emerged from another room, saw the group, jogged over. So? Reinstated, Torres said, beaming. Our doc is official again. Nia hugged Brooke hard enough to hurt. Knew they'd see sense eventually. You available for drinks? I'm buying. I'm available for sleep, maybe for a week. They laughed, the 4 of them, in a hospital hallway that smelled like antiseptic and second chances.
Later, after they'd dispersed, after Brooke had found a quiet room and collapsed into the first real bed she'd seen in days, she lay in the dark and thought about hearts. About hearts that stopped and hearts that kept beating. About the choice to fight for that beating, regardless of orders or protocol or personal cost. She thought about Aleppo's children and yesterday's soldiers and all the lives between that she'd walked away from because authority had told her she wasn't worthy to save them. Never again. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Training program starts in 30 days. First class of medics arrives then. They need to learn from the best. That's you, Reeves. Brooke smiled in the darkness, closed her eyes, and slept without nightmares for the first time in 8 years. Because some stories don't end with the tribunal or the demotion or the years of silence. Some stories end with a person reclaiming who they always were, standing in a training bay while rain whispers against the windows, teaching the next generation that courage isn't about permission. It's about keeping hearts beating. No matter what. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.